Hi, good evening. Steve Adler. Got a minute? All right, a lot of things to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about some numbers. We're going to talk about what the council did with the budget last night so that I can tell you what we really did. I've been reading headlines all day that say we did things we didn't do. So I'm going to tell you what we actually did. But first, let's start with the virus. Let's look at the numbers. This is the City of Austin dashboard. You can see that it tells us that new admissions 22, 7-day moving average 33. So the number continues to move down, but at a really slow pace and with great volatility. Sometimes the number's low, the next day it's high. We're going to look at the UT chart in a second. That looks like this chart in the middle, but it has the actual numbers in there. It's not on a graph, so it's actually lined up right. But still, we're doing a lot better than we were when we were facing the ICUs. New case count today is 152. That number, I think, is artificially low. It's hard to get good data. The state sent back like 2,000 results, some dating back to April rather. Those numbers aren't real helpful right now. So we're working our way through the data that the state kind of dumped on us. They're doing the best they can, but they're just getting, it's real difficult for them as well. A lot of parts of the state seeing infectivity rising more rapidly than us. I think we have a graph that'll speak to our infectivity and the state's infectivity in just a second. So I think that number is probably a little bit low. The mint green numbers in the middle, those are the 7-day moving averages. The 7-day moving average for hospitalizations 268. Actual hospitalizations significantly lower than that today, 236, which is a good sign, significantly below the 7-day average. And ICUs, 7-day moving average is 96. The actual number in ICUs tonight, 89. So that's continuing to move in the right direction. Ventilators, the 7-day moving average is 70, and we have 60 people that are on ventilators. So those numbers all seem to be moving in the right direction, which is good, but still relatively flat and with continued great volatility. The number of so those are those numbers. Let's go to the next dashboard. Second city dashboard. Those green numbers in the middle are the ones I just gave you. They're the numbers tonight for hospitalizations, ICUs, and ventilators. With the additional cases that have been reported, we're up to 23,870. The number of deaths, 332, which is an increase of 4. So 4 more people passed away. I understand that Constable George Morales' father passed away today of COVID. It's still a serious disease, and there's still a lot of families that are suffering great losses every day. All right, let's take a look at one of the other data charts. I want you to pull one up for us. This is the University of Texas chart. This is the one that it's like that chart on the first dashboard that looks kind of like a cartoon. This is the real number. Look at those green numbers that are the actual numbers. The green line is kind of like the mean number. It's the 7-day moving average. And it takes us up to August 13th. So this is up to date as of yesterday's numbers. The green line that's to the right is what they're projecting from the numbers that we see. And you can see it's projecting us as being flat, not going down anymore. It's projecting us as being flat. That's a concern because when we're flat and we're not going down, something could go wrong, and we're just 10 days to 2 weeks away from overwhelming the ICUs again. We have to continue to press that number down. Of concern, if you take a look at the numbers that she has, Dr. Myers, in the upper left-hand corner are our number above 1. Remember, we were getting down below that number. but based on the numbers here most recently, it looks like it could be just above 1. If it's above 1, that means our virus is growing, it's spreading. The probability of the epidemic is growing right now, 72%. That is not a good sign. Doubling time down to 22 days, 14-day change, 2% more infections today than before. Look at those green dots. You can see how they're becoming more spread out, more diffuse. They're not holding us down. You can see why that number is flat. I know that we're not facing the immediacy of ICUs overwhelming our hospitals. But if we want to be able to sustain the opening of schools and the opening of businesses, then we're going to have to, as a community, to do better than that. We're going to have to keep social distancing, do a better job with masking. We have to force through that number. We're going to start tracking here soon infectivity. I told you that, at one point we were above 15% infectivity. The numbers are dropping in our city, but not for everybody. In the Hispanic community, the numbers are still high. And in order for us to be in a good place, all of us need to be in a good place together. We're not going to be able to move forward and sustain the opening of schools or businesses unless every racial group, every ethnic group gets their infectivity down below 5%. You have any more charts on the virus, Anita? This is the Dr. Escott's chart. This is the actual new admissions. The blue line follows where we are every day. You can see it up, down, up, down, up, down, pretty volatile. The yellow line is the 7-day moving average. You can see it's flattening out in the middle of that volatility. Next chart. We may not have a chart. I think we have one, that shows infectivity here in Austin versus Texas as a whole, here in Travis County. I wanted you to see this. The red line is the infectivity percentage here in Travis County. The blue line is the infectivity percentage in Texas. It's the number of people going to get a test, and the test is positive. You can see back where we were when our numbers were so much higher than the state. That's when we were pleading with the governor to let us do masking and make it mandatory in our city. The governor was not real inclined to do that. He was looking at numbers and effectivity numbers around the state that were stabilized, still at a place that's too high, still at a place that is over 5%, but not dealing with what we were dealing with here in Travis County. We took a hard position. You go back to that one just for a second, Anita. We pushed through that infectivity when we were much higher, and we started masking. We started bringing it down. You can bring that same exhibit back here in just a second. There it is. You can see, and we brought our infectivity down, and then it was flat for a while, and then it started dropping again. But look what's happening in Texas. Texas, mostly in rural areas right now, infectivity is going up. So there is a statewide issue with an infectivity percentage like that is heading north. I mean, it is getting larger. That's a really significant issue for our state. I'd be willing to bet that when you look in the rural areas, you're not getting the same adoption levels of masking that you're getting in the urban areas. And I don't know that to be true just based on everything else I see. I bet that is what's happening. All right, so those are the data pieces that we have here tonight. I want to let you know that the Austin Music Disaster Relief Fund that we were talking about on earlier days is closing its application cycle due to the overwhelming number of applicants submitted in just the first 3 days. All the funds have been expended. That's the bad news, that it's no longer has more money. Good news that it was able to help so many people. But the even better news right now is that this week, the city's Economic Development Department announced the Austin Creative Worker Relief Grant. That's now been announced. It's a $3.5 million fund providing $2,000 grants to help Austin's creative sector workers offset expenses like rents and bills and groceries. There is the banner that you can apply for it. Creative worker is an individual whose current or primary occupation is in the arts or music or the film, museums, preservation, and other kinds of professions. It includes both practicing artists and the associated personnel within those creative industries. Creative sector workers can submit applications online beginning on Monday. That's Monday, August 17th at 10 a.m. And you have to submit applications between then and Friday, August 28th at 5 p.m. But if the Austin Music Disaster Relief Fund is any example, you're going to want to submit your application really early in that process. So visit atxrecovers.com. You can review the application, review eligibility requirements, frequently asked questions, and you can look at the grant details. The City of Austin just recently announced a relationship with the Austin cohort of Reopening Every Venue Safely. That's REVS campaign. Austin is the first city in this nationwide campaign. The goal is to help our live music venues establish industry standard best practices, preparing for a time when local health authorities determine we can begin reopening. You want to reopen those places? Let's drive the level of infectivity down so that we can all do that. If we do that, there are benefits for us getting it done. And then we hope that that motivates people to get the line moving down instead of flattening out. Beginning this Saturday, beginning tomorrow, the Austin Parks and Recreation Department is reopening limited park opportunities and outdoor facilities that have been opened. This is behaviors that still follow the social distancing of this strict period that we're still in, as things like golf and some other activities. So these changes were made in consultation with the Austin Public Health Department. So go to austintexas.gov/park closures for more details. That's the banner to follow. 30,000 view of what we're going through. The director of the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, said yesterday that unless every American follows recommended coronavirus measures, this could be the worst fall from a public health perspective that we have ever had. Remember, as we start getting into the fall, we're going to start seeing influenza. Influenza filled our hospitals a year ago. That's why we're going to be trying to get everybody to get their flu shots in September, early October, so that we can be better protected from that. We're hoping that if everybody wears masks for the coronavirus, that's also going to help with the influenza as well. The World Health Organization said that this virus is costing $400 billion a month globally. I want to talk to you now just a little bit about the budget, the city's budget. And there are two things that I want you to know from the budget. So Anita, if you pull up that first screen, I want you to know two things. And before we get this, I want you to know that we did some really transformative work yesterday, but we did not cut the police budget by $150 million. We didn't do it. But I know that's the headline. I see that in the social media that's coming. So let's talk about what it is that we did do. What we did is we start thinking of the budget in terms of like three buckets, because we did things in three different areas. The first area is the actual money that we cut from the police budget and that we reapplied. So that bucket totaled just over $21 million. What was cut from the police department? 3 cadet classes were indefinitely delayed for next year. Some unfilled positions were cut, and some of the overtime allotment was reduced. And together, those things totaled that $20 million. Now, by making those cuts, we did not cut any current police officers. And Chief tells us that it's not going to impact things like 911 response times and the like. But we cut those things, that $21.5 million. What did we then do with that money? Because we took it from police for the unfilled positions and the cadet classes and some of the overtime. How did we spend it? So we moved it over to these categories, but the 5 big categories are the ones that you see. The biggest amount of money was to house people who are experiencing homelessness. It's the permanent supportive housing. There was money to take people out of camps and move them into homes. We started buying some motels. We need operating costs for those things. And that's what this money does. It labels organizations like Caritas that has a 95% success rate. When they take people and get them into permanent supportive housing, they stabilize their lives. They don't end up back on the street. That's a much better way for us to deal with the people in camps than sending our police officers out to deal with them. If we can get them out of the camps, put them into actual homes, that would be much better for everybody. The next big amount of money that you see was to increase EMS capacity. Most of the calls that the fire department makes, many of the calls the police department makes are medical calls. And we don't need to be sending our firefighters and our police officers out on those medical calls. We should be sending EMS out on those calls. So we're going to increase the capacity of EMS. If we do that, then there'll be less health costs for our police officers to take. So hopefully that also will work to reduce their time commitments on things other than fighting crime, which is what we want our police officers to be able to do. We've been loading them down with being our social workers, dealing with people experiencing homelessness, with going out on medical calls, but we're going to try and start fixing that so that we can return that time to the police officers. It also included money for shelter for women that were in abusive situations. In Austin right now, one of the areas of crime that's always been hard for us to deal with is the increases in family violence. So we have someone that's in her home, and that she's in an abusive situation. She fears for her safety, the safety of her children. She calls great organizations like SAFE and says, I need to get out of this place. But right now, there's no capacity for all of the people that are calling. They get put on a wait list and they have to stay in that home. Wouldn't it be better if we can pull those people out of those homes before they end up getting hurt, becoming a crime statistic that then the police respond to after they become a crime statistic like that? We need to increase our ability to provide the sheltering space so that no one's on a wait list. When they're in that situation, we can pull them out. That's some of the money that was spent with that money that we took out of the police budget. It also includes money for mental health, first responders, because our police shouldn't be our first responders on mental health. And we've had some problems with police calls trying to do interventions that began as a mental health distress call. And then a considerable amount of money also for violence prevention programs. That is all the money that came out of the police budget, and that's what we put the money to. And what we put the money to is designed to help make us safer, as well as to free up time for officers, maybe even reduce the number of officers that are ultimately needed because we're taking away from their responsibility being social workers and mental health first responders. Okay, that's the $21 million. Now there's a second bucket of items. It's an $80 million bucket. And in this bucket, we're trying to decouple items. So it includes things like the forensic lab. which is paid for by the police department. But for a couple of years that we're studying at that now, we've had a couple consultants take a look at that. And the suggestion is, and some of the conversations we've had with the district attorney and with the county, is that that really ought to be an independent entity. The forensic lab doesn't need to be under police, or it needs to be perhaps an independent entity, perhaps something that we do as a consortium with the DA and with the county. But if we do that kind of thing, give it that measure of independence, it may very well be more effective in court because it's going to be seen as being more independent. That can certainly be civilianized. I'm not sure we need sworn officers having to take on the responsibility of that. That's about $13 million. Now, it's not like we passed the budget yesterday and then it changes. It can't change that fast. But over the course of the year, we're asking staff to take a look at how we can transition that to a more independent status. $18 million of that $80 million is what we're spending right now on 911 calls. And the question's been raised, shouldn't we be integrating 911 service with 311 service? Maybe it's the same set of operators. Maybe it's civilians in charge of both operating systems. We think that there might be economies of scale. And quite frankly, a lot of people call 911 when they want 311 and 311 when they really need 911. So that, again, is not something that we're saying happens right now, but over the course of the year, we're asking staff to take a look at integrating 911 and 311. The next item is $33 million for administrative services, not something that needs to be done perhaps by sworn officers. Sworn officers with a gun doing the administrative work. Maybe we could actually have civilians doing the administrative work. That makes sense. And we're going to spend the year taking a look at that, implementing that. For each one of these items, the council has asked the staff to come back. If there are unseen elements, unanticipated consequences, then we've asked the staff to come back to us and just tell us that there are things involved with that we did not anticipate. Internal affairs. The question is should the police officers that are doing internal affairs be in the same command line that they are being asked to investigate? Or would it be more independent and easier and better, and the perception be stronger if internal affairs was something that also had police officers or people trained in policing that was still doing that investigation, but maybe not in the same command structure? So that's $80 million. And when I go around and talk to people about forensic lab and integrating 911 and administrative services, maybe making internal affairs more independent, for most people, they look at that and they say, oh, well, yeah, that's okay. I didn't think that that's what we meant. We were taking money away from the police budget, but making those moves seems to make sense to most people that I talk to. But that's that $80 million bucket. So we had the $20 million bucket, which was actual cuts with investments. We have this decoupling. That makes sense. That's 80. And then let's take a look at the last $50 million that people are talking about. Obviously, that $80 million doesn't come out of the police budget now. If we can figure it out over the year, it might in the future, but it's only after it's gone through that kind of process. Well, here's the last $50 million. It says 49. That's a kind of a reimagining fund. These are things that may happen, may not happen. Council didn't decide those questions. All the council said was, let's put these things through a review. Let's take a look and see whether or not it makes sense for us to still have mounted patrol. A lot of cities, Philadelphia and others, are no longer doing that because the cost doesn't justify the public safety benefit. I don't know the answer to that question, but we've asked staff to take a look at it. Traffic enforcement. We have people now that are not officers that are checking for parking violations. Could we do something with traffic violations, moving violations? That's not to say that police wouldn't also be doing that when they're out on patrol, but should they be the only ones doing it? Is there part of that workload that we could take away from those sworn officers? Some people say it wouldn't be safe, that police officers sometimes most dangerous situation they have is when they stop cars, but that's probably because it's a police officer stopping the car. And if there's a criminal driving that car, they don't want a police. They're going to react not well to a police officer coming up, because a police officer might catch them if they have a warrant that's out. But if we were to divide those functions, and somebody was writing a ticket who didn't have any authority other than to write the ticket for speeding, maybe we could catch a lot more speeders, write a lot more tickets, slow down our traffic without having our police officers spending their time doing it. But we have to take a look at the training academy and recording. Maybe the training academy doesn't need to be run by police officers. Certainly we need police officers as adjunct professors in the academy, but maybe that's something that could be civilianized. Those kinds of things. Made no decision to move any of them, but said, let's take a look at them, is the other $50 million. So when you read a headline that says we slashed the police budget by $150 million, now you know better than that. You know what we actually took out, which was the 20. You know the programs we're taking a look at to maintain the functions, but maybe civilianize their leadership. You know the programs that we didn't say anything on other than let's study these programs. You can see here's the police budget, the amount that we actually cut. That was for unfilled positions, 3 cadet classes, and part of the overtime is that sliver of the pie that's in blue. The decouple elements, those are the things like forensics and internal affairs, is the yellow. And then the Imagine Fund that's not being moved right now, just being investigated and looked at, is the area that is in dark green. That's what we did in the budget yesterday. And I'm proud to have been part of that, because it has us reimagining, taking a look at what really are the proper functions in police. And if we're able to do things like the reinvestments we made, maybe that can free up time for police officers so that they can spend all of their time or most of their time engaged in fighting crime, as opposed to being our social workers and our mental health first responders. This is the direction that I think a lot of cities around the country are going. It's a direction that seems to make sense. It seems to make sense as a way to make our community more safe. And I think that is everyone's goal here, is to make the community more safe. So what do you need to know about the budget action yesterday? There was immediate action, new programs like the shelters and the homes, the mental health first responders that are being immediately funded. It's hopeful that it's being done in a sustainable way, but it is transformative way to move forward, to try to be dealing with how we stop crime from happening rather than dealing with crime once it's occurred, and to try to do that more and more over time. This is a budget that really asks the question, how much safer can we be? What this budget was not, it is not the status quo. It is not just a gesture. It is not threatening or punitive with regards to our police that are doing such an incredibly valuable function in our city, and for which we are so thankful. What we also did not do is cut $150 million out of the police budget. All right, I'm going to conclude tonight from the mailbag. You know, one of the things that we miss most a part of this pandemic is the ability to be able to participate in team sports, and I miss that. I love watching the Longhorns play. I love going to the baseball games, and you miss it. And I'm worried. I'm worried that we can't have it until we drive the infectivity down, and I miss it. But I got a picture this week from a local dad and daughter duo that have found a way to be part of the baseball season this summer. Avery, age 5, just really loves baseball and loves the Houston Astros. She didn't get to play on her team this summer. She can't attend any of the games in person, which she loves to do. So her dad helped her submit a photo of the two of them, both of them in their Houston Astros gear. Sorry, Texas Rangers. And now they attend each of the Houston Astro baseball games as a cardboard cutout. And they also saw themselves on TV. So they play the games right now, and they have cardboard cutouts in the seats, so as to give you kind of the feel that the fans are there. This is Avery and her dad. We give you a blow up there. Avery and her dad showed up as cardboard figures. Avery tells me that she's been biking and skateboarding in order to try to get her energy out, as she says, but hopes that she's going to be able to play her team sports here soon too. She wants to practice her ninja warrior skills, and she wants to compete again in the mutton busting at the rodeo. So Avery, I want to thank you for sending me the pictures, and the Stros are fortunate to have you and your dad in the stands. And with that, I want to wish you all a good night. You all take care.